Joseph Jordan is the president and co-founder of the CE4 Research Group. It's an alien abduction investigation and research team originally based out of Cocoa, Florida. Following work for NASA's Kennedy Space Center as a safety specialist, he currently works as a safety professional in South Korea. Joe has been a mutual UFO network field investigator, or MUFON field investigator, since 1993, and currently is the MUFON National Director for South Korea. He's also a member of MUFON Star Team Rapid Response Special Unit, and he's joining us now. Hello, Joseph.
How are you? Thank you for having me on.
That's a pleasure. Good to talk with you, and we're going to be talking about alien abduction. It's a controversial subject, and I found that out this year. I've published a few articles and recorded a few interviews, and I get a mixed response from people for and against the theory of alien abduction, but we're going to learn something new. And you've just published a book called Piercing the Cosmic Veil, a book that's, I'm told, has been a long time coming.
Yeah, it's a book that consists of our research of 25 years into this type of experience. I started with CE4 Research Group back in 1996. We separated ourselves from MUFON. At the time, MUFON didn't have any structure to actually look at abductions at the time. There was a few people looking at it, but nothing's, structure-wise under MUFON to say, hey, here's a list of questions to work with. So the investigators that I was working with as a state section director in Florida, we went after the abduction experience and tried to understand it and how it fit into the UFO phenomenon. So we separated ourselves from MUFON and formed CE4 Research Group. But we made sure that all the time that everything that we came across in our work was open for peer review. Everything that I've had over the 20 years has been on my website, but this is a culmination of everything that we've done into one book where somebody can have their hands on it, share it, and study it in depth.
Will people be challenged by the information in the book?
I have no doubt that they will.
Okay, in what way?
Well, the findings that we have come across with working with well over 600 experiencers over 20 years is that this seems to be an experience with entities that are not who they say they are.
Okay. Going through some of the notes on the book, I kept coming across the term true nature of the alien abduction phenomenon. So what, in your findings, is the true nature?
Well, that's kind of what I was getting to the last comment I made, is that these entities are perpetuating a deception. That is what our evidence of 20 years of research is showing. They're not who they say they are. They're coming in a guise to perpetuate this deception on humanity. I think that's when we talk about disclosure, what people are looking for is not what they're going to get. I think people are expecting to see one specific type of thing show up or be given to us by the government. But I think that the reason disclosure is actually being held is because it's nothing like people are expecting it to be. It's not the Hollywood alien that, that's being pushed on us over the past couple decades. It's something totally different. It's something a lot more sinister, and I think it will scare a lot of people when they fully come to understand what this is.
I've published a couple of articles and done a couple of interviews this year on bad aliens, and when I've posted it in some of the groups online, the response has been fairly favorable, but there's always a cross-section that are totally against aliens being termed as bad, and the people involved in these abductions, I mean, they were genuine. They really were genuine and scared. So I wonder whether we're kind of on the same path here, because they did have evil intentions.
Well, what we found was the same thing that you have found in our research, but what we were able to put together over this extensive amount of time and number of people that we've worked with dealing with good and bad entities during their experience, is that the whole thing still is a deception. When you are dealing with these entities that are supposedly good and supposedly have good intentions for you, it's just that they are better at the deception, or I would say that they are another higher part of the deception. It's almost like what we're dealing with as you see on TV in a police show. You end up with a guy that's been arrested. They take him into a room and he meets two different policemen, one good cop, one bad cop. And they're trying to get him to, admit to whatever he's done wrong. And they play this little game of good cop and bad cop. One's there to help him and the other one's there to beat it out of him. Keep in mind, they're both cops. And that's the same situation we're dealing with here with this experience.
What has your findings? What have you found the aliens to be? Are they a spiritual entity, an interdimensional entity, or are they a physical entity?
Well, when I first started out into this, I was under the assumption, after reading everybody else's work back in the early 90s when I started, that this was actually dealing with an extraterrestrial biological entity. And they were actually taking people at night onto ships, by whatever method that they had. But as I got deeper and deeper into the research, I started realizing that these people were actually going nowhere. What we found is that when I started doing the research, I would only listen to their testimonies of the experience. As we got deeper and deeper into the study, we started seeing a similarity between what you would call stage hypnosis, where people come up on stage and you got a hypnotist that convinces people to do strange things and they don't even remember that they're doing it. The similarity there was just, it was amazing to see the same thing going on with the abduction experience. So I went back and started re-interviewing a lot of the experiencers that I'd worked with. And I started asking them different sets of questions. For instance, if I was to ask you about your last birthday, how you celebrated your last birthday, if we had a little sit down in your office and we decided to remember your last birthday, you would remember, I could get you by asking the right questions to remember every aspect of that day you enjoyed. And you probably remember things because I asked the right questions of things that you never thought you even saw or remembered. That's not using hypnosis. That's just asking the right questions as an investigator. And that's part of my job as a safety professional, getting to a root cause on an accident is asking the right questions. As we started doing this, what I found was, even though on your birthday, you could remember every aspect of it. If you were in a building, you could tell me it was cold or hot. You could tell me if you felt the fans blowing from the ceiling air conditioning. You could tell me whether you were on carpet or on concrete. You could tell me, every part of your senses was recorded, and you could give me an example of every part of those senses that you have experiencing your birthday. But when I went to these people and redid the experience with them, had them relive the experience, not all the senses were being recorded, only sensational aspects of it, which was telling us that what was ever behind this experience was using it as like a play. When you go to a play, a Broadway play, and you see a stage setting, if that stage setting is supposed to be a living room, it's not going to have every detail you have in your living room. It's going to have enough pieces of your living room, like a couch, a couple chairs, a couple pictures on the wall, to give you the impression that you are in a living room setting, okay? Not every detail is there because it's not real. In the same situations interviewing these people, we found that not every detail was there. In other words, these memories are being implanted from these entities using sensational aspects of this experience that it seems so real to these experiencers. Every time we work with them, they say, I know what happened to me. Well, honestly, you don't. because as we get deeper into it, all you're remembering is the sensational part of the experience that was given to you to remember, enough to overload you from looking at any other parts of it. Because when you start breaking it down piece by piece, you'll see that a lot of the information is not there that should be. In other words, it's telling us it's not a reality. It's an implanted play-like memory that you've been given for the purpose of deception.
So, so the people aren't going anywhere. If they're laying in their bed, they're still in their bed when it's all happening.
Absolutely. But the memory is so vivid and so real that they cannot tell the difference. You know, that brings me to an old story that's in biblical scripture, in the Bible. Paul talks in the New Testament where God took him up to the third heaven to see heaven. But Paul says in that scripture, he says, I know not whether I was in my body or not. In other words, he was able to be shown heaven, but he could not tell whether he was really there or not, because it was that real of an experience. This abduction experience, I believe, is more of a spiritual type experience from entities that are not extraterrestrial biological entities from other worlds, but from other dimensions. Okay, it's an other dimensional reality. Jack Ballet was hitting on this very hard in his work. He realized that these entities seem to have been here forever, that these entities are in a realm that is adjacent to us. In other words, they're right there beside me, they're right there beside you, even though we're worlds apart, but they exist in a dimension beside us. They see everything that's going on. They hear everything that we say. Okay, if they're perpetuating a deception on humanity, they already have all the information to deceive us with, and that's what we believe is happening.
It almost sounds like a Matrix type scenario.
Very similar. And let me give you the best example of trying to explain somebody what I'm telling is what we found in the Matrix, the first movie. Okay, when Neo was first brought into that ship and he was laid on the table and they plugged into the back of his head, what did he see immediately? A total white area with nothing in it, right? And
Yep.
then all of a sudden things appeared, okay? Enough to give him an understanding of what the setting was. But where was he? Still on the table. It was a perfect demonstration of what the experience is. And I was just blown away the first time I saw that.